My name is Michael Thompson, and a few months ago, my only daughter sent me an email that carved a permanent scar into my heart. The subject line was simple, almost unassuming. It read, "About the wedding." Even now, I remember the moment with absolute clarity. I was sitting alone in my small living room, the one-bedroom apartment I had moved into after my divorce. The television flickered quietly in the background, playing a documentary I had already forgotten. The world outside my window was gray and raining, the kind of rain that makes everything feel more dramatic than it needs to be. When I opened the email, there was no build-up. No warm greeting. No affectionate memory to soften the blow. Just a brief, cold paragraph that changed everything. "Dad, after thinking about it and talking with Jason, I believe it is better for you not to come to the wedding. I need the day to be peaceful, positive, and free of any old tensions. I hope you understand. You can watch the ceremony through the livestream link I will send later." Those lines echoed inside my mind for days. There are moments in life that feel like someone has opened your chest and squeezed your heart with both hands. This was one of them. The world around me blurred, and all I could see was that single sentence. "Do not come to my wedding." My daughter. My only child. The girl whose scraped knees I had bandaged. The girl I had walked to school in the rain. The one who used to whisper, "You are my superhero, Daddy," before falling asleep on my chest. She was telling me to stay away from the most important day of her life. And not only to stay away, but to watch it like some distant acquaintance who was lucky enough to receive a link. I read the email once. Then twice. Then again slower, as if perhaps the meaning would change if I stared long enough. It did not. I wanted to call her immediately. My fingers hovered above my phone, trembling slightly, but something deep inside told me to stop. I knew that if I spoke to her right away, my voice would crack, and I would sound desperate. I would sound broken. I knew she would not listen. Not with the tone she had used in that email. So instead, I wrote a simple reply. "Okay, sweetheart. I love you. Please send me the link." I pressed send. And then I sat back in my chair and let the weight of the moment fall over me like a heavy blanket. That was when the anger began to rise. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger that makes a person throw things or punch walls. No. This was a cold anger. A quiet, focused anger. The kind that arrives when someone you love wounds you not by accident, but by decision. I felt the shift immediately. This was not my daughter speaking. Not truly. Someone had been whispering to her. Someone had been rewriting the story of our relationship. Someone had been pulling her further and further from me. And I knew exactly who that someone was. Jason Miller. Before I tell you what I did next, I need you to understand who I am. Not because I am special, but because I am very, very ordinary. And ordinary men often get written out of their own stories without realizing it. My name is Michael Thompson. I am 58 years old. I have worked as an accountant for more than 3 decades. My life has been steady, predictable, sometimes lonely, but honest. I am not wealthy. I am not glamorous. But I am dependable. At least, I used to be. My ex-wife, Diane, and I divorced more than 10 years ago. The separation was not dramatic, not violent. It was simply the slow decay of 2 people who no longer understood one another. She wanted a life filled with excitement and ambition. I wanted peace, stability, familiarity. In the end, both of us were tired, resentful, and disappointed. When the divorce was finalized, she kept the house, and I moved into a small apartment. We shared custody of our daughter, Emily. Even though the arrangement was fair on paper, it always felt like I had less time, less influence, less presence in her life than her mother. But I tried. Dear God, I tried. Every recital, every birthday, every small ceremony she invited me to, every school project she wanted to show me. I was there. Even when work was crushing me. Even when I was exhausted. Even when Diane looked at me with quiet judgment. Emily never doubted my love. Not when she was young. But love changes when someone else begins telling the story for you. The beginning of the end came disguised as something joyful. Emily asked me to meet her new boyfriend, Jason Miller, at a small Italian restaurant near my apartment. She sounded excited in a way I had not heard since she was a teenager. I arrived early. That is the kind of father I am. I straightened my shirt 3 times before they walked in. When Jason extended his hand, I noticed 2 things immediately. First, his grip was too firm, like he was trying to establish dominance with a handshake. Second, his smile did not reach his eyes. "Sir, it is an honor to meet you," he said. The word sir sounded rehearsed. Too polished. Too eager to impress. Throughout dinner, he talked about his work in startup investments. His phrases were vague. His explanations slippery. When I asked detailed questions, he smiled like a politician and answered without truly answering. But Emily, she glowed beside him. She laughed at everything he said, even the comments that were not funny. She touched his arm frequently. Her eyes sparkled. A father knows when his daughter is happy. And she looked happy that night. So, I pushed away my unease. I ignored the sense that something about him was artificial. I told myself I was simply being protective. An aging father who was not ready to let his little girl grow up. If only that had been true. After Jason entered Emily's life, small changes began to appear like cracks in a wall. At first, they were barely noticeable. Emily would cancel our weekly coffee because Jason had surprised her with a trip. She would reply to my messages later and later. Our long phone calls became short, clipped texts. "I am busy, Dad. I will talk to you later." That sounds nice. "Love you. I will call you soon." But soon rarely came. Then she started using phrases I had never heard from her before. Phrases that sounded suspiciously like Jason. "I need to eliminate negative energy from my life. I want to focus on people who support my future. I am learning to set boundaries. I cannot keep holding onto the past." She never said my name. She never had to. I could feel myself slipping out of her world. Not because I had changed, but because someone else was changing the story. I told myself to be patient. I told myself that young love makes people blind. I told myself she would come back. But deep down, in a part of me I did not want to face, I knew something was wrong. Not wrong with her. Wrong with him. The next blow came out of nowhere. I did not learn about my daughter's engagement through a phone call. Not through a text message. Not even through a mutual friend. I learned about it through Facebook. I was at work, reviewing a financial report, when my coworker Susan rolled over to my desk. She smiled brightly and said, "Congratulations, Michael. Your daughter is getting married." My heart stopped. "I beg your pardon?" I asked. She turned her computer screen toward me. There, on my timeline, was a photograph of Emily and Jason on a cliffside, the ocean behind them. Emily was holding up her hand, showing off an enormous diamond ring. The sun hit the stone perfectly. The caption read, "I said yes to the love of my life. I cannot wait to spend forever with you, Jason. Raute future Mrs. Miller." The world slowed down. I did not know. My daughter, my little girl, had made one of the biggest decisions of her life. And I learned about it with everyone else. I waited until the end of the day. Then I wrote, "Emily, I just saw the announcement. I am very happy for you. Please call me when you can." She did not call that night. She did not call the next night. 2 days later, she finally sent a text. "Hey Dad, sorry things have been so crazy. Thank you. Love you." That was it. No explanation. No apology. No invitation to celebrate. Just a vague, distant message. Another crack in the wall. And then came the email. The one that took everything. Every year, every memory, every moment of fatherhood, and sliced through it like a blade. "Dad, I think it is best for you not to come to the wedding. I want a positive day with no drama. I am sure you understand. You can watch on the livestream." She wrote it politely, calmly, almost professionally, as if she were emailing a colleague. My daughter had become a stranger. But I could see the shadow behind her words. Jason had been whispering in her ear. She was not protecting herself. She was protecting him. And that realization shook me awake. Something was very wrong. And if I did nothing, I would lose my daughter forever. That was the moment I whispered to myself. Okay. I know what I must do. There are moments when the truth does not arrive gently. It does not knock on the door or wait to be invited inside. It barges in, slaps you across the face, and demands that you wake up. That is what happened the day I received my daughter's email telling me not to come to her wedding. For several hours I sat in my living room, staring at the screen, replaying her words in my head. Not because I was confused by them, but because I was trying to understand how we had gotten here. How someone who once clung to my leg, begging me not to leave for work, could now say, "I think it is best if you do not come." I knew that voice was not fully hers. Someone else had been guiding her, nudging her, reshaping the world around her. And the more I thought about it, the more the same name returned to my mind like a needle scratching across an old vinyl record. Jason Miller. I am not a man who jumps to conclusions. My entire career has been built on verifying details, checking numbers, double-checking assumptions. I have learned that feelings can be misleading, but patterns rarely lie. So the first question I asked myself was simple. Why would Jason want me gone? A normal man does not fear the father of the woman he loves. A normal man does not encourage distance between a daughter and her family. A normal man, especially on the day of his wedding, welcomes her history and her roots. But Jason was not normal. Something in him had always felt rehearsed. He spoke like someone selling a dream. He smiled like someone who had practiced it too many times. He answered questions with empty words that sounded important but meant nothing. And most importantly, he wanted control. Control over Emily. Control over her time. Control over her beliefs. Control over her sense of right and wrong. Little by little, he had been isolating her. Pulling her away from her mother. Away from me. Away from anything that did not fit the world he wanted to build. And if a man's power relies on isolation, then a father is his greatest threat. I understood that now. But suspicion was not enough. If I confronted Emily with nothing more than instinct, she would dismiss me as bitter or jealous or controlling. That is exactly what Jason wanted her to believe. I needed the truth. Not only for myself. Not only to stop the wedding, but to save my daughter from binding her life to a man who might destroy everything she had worked for. The first person I contacted was my ex-wife, Diane. We had not spoken in nearly a year, aside from brief, polite updates about tax documents or holidays. Our relationship was not hostile, it was simply distant. Two people living in separate universes linked only by a shared past. When she answered the phone, she sounded surprised. Michael? Is everything all right? No, I said plainly. It is not. I told her about the email. I read it to her word for word. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Oh God, she whispered. She said that. Yes, I replied. And I have a feeling Jason had a hand in it. Diane hesitated, then sighed heavily. Michael. He has been planting ideas for months. Not just about you. About me too. What kind of ideas? That we were toxic. That our divorce traumatized her. That we do not support her dreams. That we hold her back. That we want to control her. He projects everything onto us, and she absorbs it. I clenched my jaw. What else has he been saying? He brings up the divorce constantly, Diane confessed. He twists it. Makes it sound like you abandoned us. I told her that was not true. I told her we both played a role. But you know how memory works after many years. It becomes easier for people to rewrite it. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. So he is turning her against us little by little. Yes, she said. He is isolating her. I have seen it. But every time I try to warn her, she pulls away. I rubbed my forehead, trying to calm the storm building inside me. Diane, I said quietly, do you trust him? No, she replied immediately. Not at all. Something about him feels off. Everything he says sounds perfect, but nothing ever seems real. And his business? That is another thing, she said. He talks about deals and investors and expansions. But I never see him working. He is always available. Always by her side. That is not the schedule of a man building a global company. Her words confirmed what I had been trying not to admit. Do you think he is using her? I think he is using someone, she answered. And I think he wants us out of the picture so he can do whatever he wants. When we ended the call, I realized something important. I was not just fighting for a seat at my daughter's wedding. I was fighting for her future. If I wanted to stop the wedding, I could not rely on emotion. I needed evidence. Cold, undeniable evidence. So I started where any accountant would start, with the numbers. I searched for Jason's company online. The website was polished and modern. It used phrases like innovative investment solutions, global strategies, transforming the financial landscape. But there were no specifics. No team members listed. No major clients. No actual portfolio examples. The address at the bottom of the site led to a co-working space. Not an office. Not a headquarters. Just a rented desk in a building full of other people with laptops and dreams. That was the first crack. Then I looked up the company registration. His business had only existed for 18 months. 18 months. Yet he had told us that he had spent years traveling internationally to manage high-level deals. Another crack. Next, I reached out to a college friend of mine named Harold. He worked in risk management for a bank and had access to information I did not. Harold, I said, I need your help. I think the man my daughter is about to marry is involved in something shady. He asked for Jason's full name and the company details. 2 days later, he called me back. I cannot share confidential specifics, he said, but I can tell you this, I would never put a single dollar into anything connected to him. Is it that bad? I asked. Michael, he said slowly, there are red flags everywhere. Complaints. Inconsistencies. People reporting that they invested and then the terms changed. Funds that disappeared without reasonable explanation. He has been keeping himself just out of reach of legal trouble, but he is absolutely on the radar. My stomach tightened. I had hoped Harold would reassure me. Instead, he confirmed my worst fear. Jason was not merely arrogant. Not merely controlling. He was a predator. The next phase of my investigation was painful. It required talking to strangers who had been hurt. People who had lost money and trust. But I did it. I tracked down 2 individuals who had complained about Jason online. Both were willing to talk once I explained who I was and why I needed their help. The first was a middle-aged woman who had been convinced to invest her inheritance. The second was a young entrepreneur who had given Jason his startup funds. Their stories were identical. Jason charmed them. He used big promises and confidence. He talked about rapid growth and life-changing opportunities. Then the money vanished. Excuses. Delays. Promises of next quarter. Emails that danced around the truth. And eventually, silence. I asked them both if they would be willing to provide documentation. They did. Emails. Contracts. Transfer records. Screenshots. Broken promises. And slowly, piece by painful piece, I assembled a folder thick enough to change everything. When I finished collecting the evidence, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the folder as if it were a bomb. Because in some ways it was. If I used it, I would break my daughter's heart. I would shatter her wedding day. I would wound her pride. She might never forgive me. But if I stayed silent, Jason would destroy her life one day at a time. Slowly, quietly, expertly. This is the cruel truth about parenthood. Sometimes you must risk your child hating you temporarily, in order to save them permanently. And so, late that night, under the hum of the kitchen light, I whispered aloud the words I had been avoiding. I must go to the wedding. Not as an invited guest. Not as a quiet observer. But as a father who had one last chance to protect his daughter. The next morning, I ironed the only good suit I owned. I polished my shoes. I placed the folder of evidence carefully inside a waterproof case. And I set my alarm early. Because I would not watch my daughter's wedding through a livestream. I would walk into it, carrying the truth. The morning of the wedding arrived with a cold, sharp clarity, as if the universe wanted every detail etched into my memory forever. I woke before sunrise, long before my alarm. My body felt heavy, but my mind was alert in a way I had never experienced before. Today was the day my daughter would either be saved, or I would lose her completely. I stood in front of the mirror and adjusted the tie around my neck. My reflection looked older than I remembered. The streaks of gray hair seemed more pronounced. The lines around my eyes looked deeper. My suit fit more tightly than it once had. But I stood tall anyway. Because today, I was not merely a man. Today, I was a father with a single purpose. I took the folder from the table and slid it carefully under my arm. Inside was everything. Every complaint. Every document. Every communication that proved who Jason truly was. I left the apartment and drove in silence, listening only to the rhythm of my own breath. The wedding venue was an elegant countryside estate an hour outside the city. When I turned onto the long gravel driveway, rows of tall oak trees lined the path like witnesses standing tall for a trial that was about to begin. White chairs were arranged in perfect rows facing a floral archway wrapped in pink roses and eucalyptus leaves. A string quartet was rehearsing under the shade of a large tree. Guests dressed in light summer colors walked toward the seating area, greeting one another with excitement and admiration. I parked at the far edge of the property, stepped out of the car, and allowed myself a moment to breathe. For a few minutes, I did not move. I simply watched. I watched strangers smile. I watched friends laugh. I watched the final preparations for a day that had been carefully crafted to look perfect. And then I remembered the email. Please do not come. Watch through the livestream. No. I took the folder and began walking toward the seating area. Each step felt heavier than the one before it. Yet I did not hesitate. Not once. Nobody stopped me. Nobody asked who I was. Perhaps they assumed I was an uncle, or a distant relative. Or perhaps I simply blended into the crowd, just another faceless man in a suit. I sat in the last row. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I was here. And I would not leave. For several minutes, people continued to arrive. They filled the seats with soft chatter, the air buzzing with anticipation. Then, from the front of the aisle, I saw him. Jason Miller. He was speaking with the officiant, adjusting a boutonniere pinned perfectly to his suit. His hair was slicked back. His stance was confident. His smile was bright. A man who believed today belonged entirely to him. He scanned the crowd in a casual, possessive sweep, until his eyes found mine. The smile collapsed. He froze for a split second. Just a flicker. Just enough for me to know that he had not expected this. He braced himself, then walked toward me with quick, decisive steps. When he reached the last row, he leaned down so only I could hear him. Mr. Thompson, he said, voice tight, I thought Emily made it clear. You are not supposed to be here. So she told me, I replied calmly. You need to leave, he whispered sharply. You are upsetting her. You are upsetting me. This is not your day. No, I agreed. It is not my day. It is hers. That is why I am here. His jaw clenched. Do not do this. Do what? I asked softly. Tell the truth? That is what you are afraid of, is it not? His eyes hardened into something sharp and hostile. You have no idea what you are stepping into, he hissed. You are correct, I replied. I do not know everything, but I know enough. I tapped the folder gently with my hand. His eyes followed the motion, and for the first time since I had met him, I saw something break through the polished exterior. Fear. He straightened his posture quickly, forcing confidence back into his voice. If you make a scene, he said, you will ruin her life. Not mine. Hers. She will never forgive you. I met his gaze with absolute stillness. If I stay silent, I said, I lose her anyway. And she loses much more. Jason opened his mouth, but before he could respond, the music began. The quartet shifted into a soft, delicate melody. People started to stand. The air changed. It was time. Jason stepped back, gave me one final glare, and returned to the front. I stood with the crowd. My heart pounded against my ribcage like a warning drum. Then I saw her. Emily emerged from behind the estate building, holding Diane's arm. Her dress was simple, elegant, the kind of gown that radiated purity and softness. Her hair was woven with tiny flowers. Her makeup was delicate. She looked beautiful. Beautiful and troubled. Even from a distance, I could see that her smile was too tight. Her eyes too wide. Her shoulders tense. As she walked down the aisle, she glanced briefly at the crowd, and then her gaze landed on me. She stopped mid-step. Her breath hitched. Her expression twisted. Shock, hurt, betrayal. Diane looked at both of us, eyes widening but saying nothing. The music continued, though it felt strangely hollow now. Emily forced herself to keep walking, but her gaze flicked back to me several times, each time more uncertain than the last. When she reached the front, Jason took her hand. His smile returned swiftly, but his fingers dug into her skin slightly, as if reminding her to stay focused. The officiant cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today." I stepped out from the last row. At first, my voice did not carry. It emerged faint and brittle. "Excuse me." The officiant paused, confused. "Sir, please remain seated." I took several steps forward. "I am sorry," I said, louder this time. "I cannot remain seated." Every head turned. Every whisper fell silent. Every eye focused on me. Emily's voice broke through the tension. "Dad, please stop. What are you doing?" I held the folder in both hands. "I am doing what a father must do." Jason's face tightened. He was trying to maintain composure, but the mask was beginning to crack. "Michael," he snapped quietly, "do not do this." I ignored him completely. I looked at my daughter. My voice trembled, but I forced it to remain steady. "Emily," I said, "I love you more than anything in this world. That is why I must say what I am about to say." She shook her head, tears forming. "Dad, please. Not here. Not now." "If I am wrong," I said softly, "I will walk away forever. You will never have to see me again. But if I am right..." I raised the folder slightly. "Then you deserve to know the truth before you tie your life to this man." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jason stepped closer to me, rage simmering under his skin. "You are insane," he muttered. "Do not ruin this day." I opened the folder. "This man," I said clearly, "has been reported multiple times for fraud, theft, and manipulation. He has taken money from investors and disappeared. He has lied about his work, his past, and his success. I have documentation from people he has scammed, statements from those he has deceived, and details proving his company is not what he claims." Jason erupted. "This is lies," he shouted. "All lies. You are trying to sabotage this wedding." I turned toward the guests. "If any of you doubt me, I have copies for you to read. I did not come here to embarrass my daughter. I came here to protect her." Emily shook her head again, trembling. "Dad, I do not understand. Why are you doing this to me?" My voice broke. "Because I love you. And because I refuse to let you walk into a future built on lies." The officiant stepped back, uncertain. Jason was shaking, but not with fear, with anger. "You pathetic old man," he spat. "You cannot handle that she chose me instead of you. This is about your ego, not about her." "No," I said quietly. "This is about truth." For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. Then a voice rose from the back of the venue. "I can confirm what he is saying." Everyone turned. A woman in her late 50s stood, clutching her purse tightly. Her eyes were red, her expression pained. "I invested my inheritance with Jason," she said. "He promised unbelievable returns. He promised security. Then he vanished. I lost everything." A young man stood next. "He did it to me too," he said firmly. He took my startup funds.
He manipulated me.
He lied. And when I pushed for answers, he changed his number and threatened me legally. Whispers filled the air, horrified and hushed. People stared at Jason with widening disbelief. Emily clutched her bouquet, knuckles white. She turned to Jason. "Is this true?" she whispered. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again.
No words came out.
And in that silence, she had her answer. Her entire body trembled.
Her breath caught on his sob.
She staggered back a step, looking as if the world beneath her feet had tilted violently. Jason reached for her.
"Emily, listen to me."
She recoiled as if burned. "Do not touch me," she whispered.
Jason's face twisted into fury.
"This is all your fault," he hissed at me. "No," I said, stepping closer.
"This is yours."
And that was the moment two men in suits entered quietly from the side of the venue. Not security. Not staff. Agents. They walked with purpose, with calm authority. One of them lifted a badge briefly. "Jason Miller," he said. "We need you to come with us immediately." The crowd gasped. Emily dropped her bouquet. Jason tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. I am in the middle of my wedding. You cannot." "We can," the agent said, "and we must." Jason tried to run. He made it only a few steps before they blocked his path. His final shouts echoed across the stunned venue. "Emily! Tell them this is a mistake. Emily!" But she did not move. She simply watched as the man she thought she would marry was taken away in handcuffs. And as he was escorted off the property, the illusion of her future shattered into pieces at her feet.